In Tim's life, he worked with many different artists and musicians to collaborate on songs. And the next person I'm going to speak to is a singer and songwriter that I've had the opportunity to work with and get to know. This is Gavin DeGraw.
What's up, Aloe? Good to
Hi,
see you,
Gavin.
man.
Good to see
Thanks
you.
for
Thank you
having me
for
on, man.
man. Thank you for joining me in this tribute to Tim. It looks
Oh,
like you're surviving the quarantine, all right?
absolutely, man. I'm surviving, but I think I'm worried death by boredom more than I'm worried by
How though?
virus.
I mean, you're a musician. Like, there's gotta. I guess it's because you have to just make music by yourself. You thrive in collaboration too, don't you?
I definitely thrive in collabs, but yeah, man, I want to collaborate in life in general. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
um, getting together with a talented, genius like you is definitely part of my lifeblood. And also, I fundamentally miss doing the other thing, which is my other favorite thing to do, which is drinking with strangers.
Oh,
So, you know,
of
and
course. What, you have a restaurant, right? You have a restaurant, a bar?
yeah, yeah, I have a restaurant bar here downtown, Nashville Underground. We're like this giant um, megaplex barroom, honky tonk, bull riding, and all kinds of that cool stuff. And so, usually we're popping right about now, but unfortunately, the world is on pause. So I miss the energy. I miss seeing people getting rowdy on the streets and the music blaring out of every bar room in this town.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted to ask you about your connection to Tim because when I saw you at the tribute in Stockholm, we didn't get a whole lot of time to talk. But
Sure.
I could have sworn I heard you in the hotel room practicing or rehearsing or something or making music uh,
Probably.
all hours of the night. But
Probably.
we didn't get a chance to connect. So yeah, tell me, what was your connection?
With Tim, I remember I had met Tim at a initially at a one of these radio conferences. Like
Like a
one of those big I don't know what you call it, almost like a junket.
hmm
Where they happen like once or maybe a couple times a year, where every artist who's out there who's got a record coming out or is thinking about putting out a record or just put out a record goes. And you know how it is, like you go out to maybe like the Staples Center or whatever, and they'll have this huge junket, and there's just artists coming in all day long with all their reps and this and that, and every radio station in the country and a lot of radio stations from around the world are there, and they're broadcasting live, or they're at least putting together some content to play throughout the season.
yeah.
And Tim came in, and I knew he looked familiar. And somebody told me who it was. They're like, "Oh, that's Avicii." Blah blah. You know how the business is. There's always
Right.
somebody to whisper in your ear and let
You
you
have
know.
somebody. Uh-huh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm like, "Oh, that's Avicii." Right on. So, and he had this nice, cool calm about him. He had a really friendly demeanor, a nice, mild, friendly, approachable demeanor, which was a beautiful thing about his personality type.
Yep.
And very understated. Um, and so I approached him and I said, "Hey, man, I just want to say congratulations and just some very, just a quick hello, because the nature of those things. It's everybody's getting tugged here and there."
Sure.
Um, and then he reached out. It was probably 2 years later. Um, and it was through a couple guys, mutual friends, guys I'm sure like Rami and Carl Falk,
Yeah, of
and
course.
guys like that. And Rami and Carl I had already known for many years,
hmm
kind of in and not in, working with Max Martin and this and that, just that community, you know what I mean? Like the all the Vikings, all those melodic Vikings up there, you know. So anyway, they said, "Hey man, we heard you're in LA. Why don't you come by the studio?" Which I did, and I think it might have been Henson It might have been the Henson Studio, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Maybe not the old Henson Studio, which is where they used to make the Muppets, and shit like
I've
that.
been there. Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
Spot.
really, really cool. And I think that might have been the studio we got together in. And I walked in. Of course, everything was being filmed the whole time, which was cool. Which I kind of liked what was happening because
I'm glad that there's documentation of everything. I think there was the things that I did with Tim were not well documented except for the
yeah,
one session, but I can appreciate it now because like, man, in his absence, you want to have some one of those moments recorded to
yeah,
just be able to look back and see.
100%, man, 100%. It's kind of like it's one of the funny things I like to do anyway. Is because as we're gonna get older, if God willing, we do. As you go back and you look at that old footage, it's kind of like one of my favorite things to do is when I'm watching movies or old movies and series and things like that. Like I'll go back and I'll watch have you ever seen Band of Brothers?
Yes.
Okay, so there's this gigantic cast, right, in Band of Brothers, right? And granted, I saw it years ago, but I was just watching it the other day. I was watching an episode or two. And one of my favorite things to do is look in who's in the background
Mm-hmm.
of old movies, old shows, and this and that, because you're always going to see people who weren't famous yet, who weren't a star yet, and they're somewhere part of the woodwork of that scenery or of that whatever's taking place, or they got a
Mm-hmm.
small part, and not a big part, something small. And I was like, oh my God, that's Tom Hardy. You know what I mean? Like he's just kind of in the background,
Right.
unimportant. And that's also the beauty of documenting stuff like this. One of the things I thought was real cool, because the more that stuff that's out there, I know we're going to look back at some footage somewhere that you were in somewhere and be like, oh my God, I can't believe such and such was, in the room that day. And look what he became later. You know what I mean? Look what she
Yeah.
became later. You know what I mean? One of
Yeah.
those.
Everybody's got a story, and
100%.
not everybody's story starts at the top, right? So we all
Exactly.
come from somewhere, and it's usually
Yeah.
bootstrap, especially in this music business. So building it up. You're right.
Exactly.
And so wait,
Yeah.
so uh, so you met at a press junket. You met Tim at a press junket.
Yeah.
You connected, and
Yeah.
2 years later, got a phone call
Yeah.
from him, an email, or what happened?
It was like a message through Rami,
Okay.
and then I think also Tim had sent me like a random email, probably just to, because sometimes you get these messages and you're like, is this real today? You know what I mean? Because Avicii was really hitting his stride, so you never know what's coming in,
Yeah.
And I was like, is this real? So I was like double checking, and Rami's like, no, this is real. Like Avicii wants to do something. I said, cool, I said, let me know what he wants, because if he wants me to sing or write or whatever, I'm cool. I'm cool to do whatever. So I showed up, and a bunch of hands had already been on deck, Tim
The
was
room was
already there,
full, you're
right?
saying. The room was full.
Yeah, the room was full, and a lot of people apparently had already come and gone on the session. As you know, the nature of music, it doesn't necessarily all get accomplished in one day. It may go on for years sometimes, and so I was like, well, who's been on it so far? And I think Mike Posner had already been in there working. It was just one of these, it was like, it was another day in the music business. You know what I mean? So, and then Carl was like, hey man, play something like, lay something down like, the top of like the riff from the top of Chariot or something like that. And I was like, oh, I don't, to be totally honest with you, I don't know how I came about that. So, I mean, that's cool food for thought, but I just kind of stumbled into it. So let's just roll around, all over the piano keys.
Yeah.
Had a nice big, like maybe like a C7 in there or something, like a big, grand piano or baby grand. And we're just started beating this thing to death. You know what I mean? I mean, it was a piano tuner's nightmare when we left that room. I'm sure. You know what I mean? It was like just absolute cavemen, you know. And but but it was cool. And then I tried laying down some ideas. We're throwing some ideas back and forth lyrically, and we couldn't come up with a concept, you know. And I said, well, let's keep it local, you know. Well, how about a local vibe? Like, what about that guy? He dresses up like Jesus,
So
and he
wait,
likes to go.
the question is, were you already in LA? Were you living in LA? Were you just passing through? Did you
I
come
was
specifically for the session?
so I've never really lived. I've never been a resident of Los Angeles, but I've always gone in and out of that town, you know, for extended periods of time. You know, there's been times where I'd rent an apartment for a few months, or and work on a record, or you know, live at the dreaded Oakwood Apartments when I first got my record deal, which was like the absolute. I mean, that was like one of those places where like only like graduate students and divorcees live, and you know, if you're the unlucky recording artist, you know,
Everybody hates you.
dude, just 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 a tough place to live at the time, you know. um but at this time I was just in and out of town for work, you know, because I was already up and running, my career was up and running. So you know, there's really a handful of places or less in the world where you have to be if you're making music, you know.
Yeah.
And LA is one of them. You know, there's certain cities you can't cross off the map and say, nah, I don't want to go there, I don't need to work there. You need to work there. And I
Yeah.
mean, if you're in our business, you must be in Los Angeles, you know, at least some of the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I happened to be there working anyway. So the timing was really just perfect, you know. And you know, it's not like you don't want to be able to say, no, sorry, I can't take a meeting, I'm working with Avicii this week. You know what I mean? Like, you want to be able to say those kind of things to people, you know, because it's credible, it's relevant, it's cool. And those are the best excuses to not have to do something else you don't really want to do. So you know, he'd be like, nah, sorry, I can't be there today, working with Tim, you know. So you know, so
Yeah, there are levels in this game. There's a
yeah,
hierarchy, some
there are.
priorities.
It's,
You
it's
know.
it's true. There really are, and there's always going to be, right? So, and you know, so anyway, so we got in that room, and there we were trying to come up with what's our angle, you know.
Yeah.
And I said, what about that guy who dresses like Jesus? And you always see him literally dresses like literally dresses like he's the Messiah, right?
Yeah.
He wears like I mean, full on, like the shroud and the
Right. The
sandals.
sandals. Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah. And he pops in and out of bars and stuff on Sunset Strip, you know, this guy. And he's this man is always in, you know, full Halloween costume garb, you
Mm-hmm.
know. I don't know if he's religious, but he looks like the Messiah, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, he's sort of like one of these people that you're driving through and you're like, oh my God, look at that guy. Like, no pun intended, but yeah, you know, oh my God, you know, and like there he is. And and just kind of like one of those surprising things when you're a tourist in Los Angeles, you know, you see somebody like you see Spider-Man and the Hulk, and then you see this guy dressed like he is, you know, with
So,
the long hair.
by the time you
Surprise.
decided to introduce the concept for lyrically to talk about
Yeah.
Sunset Jesus, had you
Yeah.
already come up with chord progression or the sound of what you wanted to
No, man, it was
make?
pretty there was a little bit of stuff happening where the guys were bouncing some ideas around. And I feel like by the time we left that night, it become something else. But you know, that's the nature of creation, is you can come in with something in a major key and leave with something that sounds like the absolute, like, most haunting, terrifying, you know, just, you know, this is the nature of creation. And so whatever small spark there were there.
Yeah.
And even if you start all over, whatever it was you were, you know, spun from is its own thing. You know what I mean? Um, and so I don't know how all of it really came about. I was just told this person came through, that person came through, and there were little nuggets, little nuggets there, That's my dad coming in. Oh, by the
Okay.
way, this is my dog. So anyway,
The question I have for you is like, um, during the session,
yeah,
my experience with Tim was like in a session, there was not really small talk. We were just really in there working and getting from 0 to 100 with trying to make a song. Did you guys have
yeah.
small talk, laughs, conversations?
I don't know how much small talk there was. I mean, I usually, for me, personality type wise, I play it. I can play it both sides, depending on the day. But typically, if I'm the new guy in the room, I just kind of come in like a bull in a china shop, just to kind of break down the social walls. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Just so everybody knows they're free to, just be whoever they want to be.
Yeah.
Um, so, but he laughed here and there, but you could tell he had music on his mind.
Yeah,
You
for sure.
know, yeah, and it was just his nature. You know what I mean? And once we got through some of that stuff, um, well, after I was like, what about that guy? He dresses like the Messiah, this and that, and he's up and down Sunset. And Rami was like, Sunset Jesus, and I said, yes, that's the title. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and then we took it from there, really. And then Tim would send me ideas back and forth via email. Like, I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about that. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And ideas that were so outrageous, that but
Sonically? Sonically outrageous?
sonically they're just out, like, but just I remember he sent me something. It was just so bonkers, and it was good, but it wasn't like discombobulated. It was just sort of like, where does this come from in somebody's brain? You
Right,
know what I'm
so when you say
saying?
bonkers, I'm wondering, are you saying, like, was it new time signatures? Was it, just an new sounds, new, synthesized sounds?
Well, interestingly, see, I'm not deep enough in the EDM world to be able to tell you what a new sound is in that
Okay,
world,
okay,
right?
gotcha, me neither. I
Right?
don't think so.
Right? But there was music being made, and it was all palatable, like it was attractive, it was hitting my ear in a pleasant way. But I remember he sent me something. He was like, I think this is like maybe one of the best things I ever made, and I think it might work.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And it was just, I think what it was is that it was so unexpected. It was like, it wasn't the music that would come in the front door. It was like the crook who's breaking in the attic window off the side of the house, but he still manages to get in, and it works. You know what I mean? And it just, somehow he made it made sense. And I was like, I don't see how. And I was like, oh, I see how. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And it was
That's
surprising to me.
that's interesting. Oh my goodness. I don't
Yeah,
know if those sounds, whatever you heard, had ever been finished and released. But
yeah.
you must be sitting on some gems that that hopefully the world will get to hear at some point.
Oh, dude. Yeah, yeah. The one thing in particular, I was like, wow, because it was just so. It just made me feel so good.
Yeah.
See, the beauty of the music in general, is it something that you cannot touch, but you can feel. And that is what's so special and magical. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can't put your hand
Yeah.
on it, but you can feel it everywhere. You know?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what the late great Bob Marley says, something along the lines of that. Music, when it hits you, you feel no pain.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, beautiful.
Yeah.
You know? And music is its own drug. It's its own drug, its own high.
I
You know
call
what I
it,
mean?
I call music the last playground. You know, as adults, we grow up, we don't go in the sandbox anymore, we don't swing on the jungle gym, but we get to have these endless experiences with the same toys over and over again.
Totally.
And we get to experience them with friends and
Totally.
to celebrate. You know, it basically is the playground, the sandbox where we get to meet new friends as well. Like music brings people together
Totally.
in a fantastic way, and you can see that
Totally.
in what Tim did, especially even just leaving a legacy that's so important enough to have a tribute. You know, there are other
Absolutely.
artists who have gone, and I don't know if um, they've made an impression in a way that everybody is still right behind every moment of their career, and you know that's something very special about Tim. So I'm just glad that I had the opportunity to be part of it, and
Oh
you
man,
know,
absolutely, man. I mean, just super cool. And if you can hear when you hear the variety of the music too,
yeah,
you know what I mean? You really
absolutely.
get to feel and hear someone's psyche and someone's many moods. And it's beautiful that what a unbelievable direct line
It's
the
a direct line.
music is from the inside of someone
Hmm.
to to we can feel how someone else felt based on the music that they're creating, you know.
Yeah,
Then that's something that Tim executed, and that's very fascinating that you can really you can feel someone's ebbs and flows fundamentally through what they create sonically. It's a magnificent way to get a direct line into the feeling that someone is having about themselves or the world or the people with them,
yeah,
or you name it.
so
You
true.
know,
So
it's just
true.
a beautiful thing.
It's a gift. We have
Yes,
an amazing opportunity. I think a responsibility as well that we get to
yes,
share this emotion and feeling that's inside of us with the world.
100%. And Tim was a facilitator of those things. You know, not everybody can get in a room with as many personality types as he did throughout his lifetime and be able to work with them. You know, I mean, you know, as an artist,
Mhm.
you know, typically if it's your name on something, right? You may become so personally invested that you're unwilling to bend or make concessions with the other person in the room because you're thinking, oh no, that will misrepresent me. This will blah 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 blah. But what's interesting from the what we call like the EDM world is there's a personality type with the EDM guys that's I think different than typical artist personality types. You have to have an MC's mentality. You have to be, whether you are social or
Mhm.
not, you have to at least be able to appreciate the many other social personality types in order to work with those types. And that's something that the EDM guys that they really do stand out in that regard, and that they're willing to and capable of working with many personality types.
Sure, it's
You
a
know?
social genre. It's not like the
Yes.
insulated singer-songwriter with a guitar who can live and die by their own creativity in the room. The
Yes.
dance music world, especially,
Yes.
is just the nature of their environment, the venues that they perform in with so many people,
Yes.
and then the creative craft, a lot of collaboration, a lot of writers, producers that are all coming together to bring sounds. It's I feel you on that.
Yeah, it's something I very much admire about the genre is it's the personality types who are capable of sort of taking in all of that information and they are not
Synthesizing
just
it, yeah.
and they're synthesizing it. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's its own skill. It's a totally different skill set. One I don't have at all. You know what I mean? I just don't have that skill set. I could never process all of that information and be able to just pick out the parts that work together. You know, I would probably fall in love with all of it. and be like, no, we'll just do a 45-minute song, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Oh man.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
It is. I want to thank you, Gavin, for your time.
Oh
Really
man,
appreciate
thank
you
you, bro.
coming to share this moment to pay tribute to Tim.
Absolutely, man. Great, man. I miss you, bro. Great to see you, man. I miss hearing you sing, man.
Likewise, and I
What
hope
a
to see
voice.
you again soon when
Good.
we can travel again.
I look forward to it, man. I look forward to it, man. Let's make something, man. Let's make some music, baby.
Absolutely.
Be
Peace.
good, my bro. Later.